A millionaire disguised himself as a poor man and went to meet his fiancée's parents. When the parents served dinner, he was horrified by what he saw on his plate. Francis discreetly adjusted his watch while observing the movement in the charity event hall, a gathering that brought together important figures in society for a noble cause. The soft light reflected in his eyes, revealing an expression of curiosity and caution. As he passed by one of the art exhibits, his gaze was captured by Emma's presence. She was conversing with a friend about the social impact of charity, a topic that aligned with Francis's own values. "Do you really think these events make any difference in today's society? Do you believe they have any positive impact?" Francis interrupted, approaching with a friendly smile. Emma turned, surprised, but quickly responded with enthusiasm. "I believe they can, but it depends a lot on who's behind them and how the resources are managed. Don't you also think that sometimes it's more about showing off than actually helping?" The sincerity in her voice and the direct way she approached the subject intrigued Francis. "Sometimes I think exactly that," Francis admitted. "I see many of these events in my line of work. I own a chain of restaurants, and we're often approached to sponsor these events. I always wonder if we're making a difference or just participating in a show." Francis's confession was genuine, reflecting his desire to do more than just contribute financially. Emma looked at Francis with newfound respect, realizing he wasn't just another businessman. "That's interesting. You have ventures that could truly make a positive impact, depending on how you use them. What do you think we could do better?" This question sparked a deep discussion about responsibility and business, as another common factor between them was the significant wealth of both families due to large investments. "I often think about inviting people who aren't involved in this kind of action, just out of societal obligation," Francis explained, guiding Emma to a quieter corner of the hall where they could talk more comfortably. "One of the events I participate in the most is against the smuggling of prohibited species in our country. I'm a vegetarian, and I hate that there are people who continue to threaten rare species." The night wore on, but their conversation only deepened. Francis became increasingly convinced that Emma was not just an intelligent and attractive woman, but someone with whom he could genuinely share not only a future, but also a purpose. He found himself thinking, "This beautiful woman truly seems to want to make a difference in her life and in society. I admire that a lot. I believe we should get to know each other better. It will definitely be worth it." As time passed, the relationship between Emma and Francis evolved from a friendship based on mutual respect and shared interests to a deep and committed romance. They spent more and more time together, sharing dreams, challenges, and laughter as their love for each other grew. It was a natural process, almost imperceptible, as if each moment together simply confirmed that they were destined to be by each other's side. One quiet evening, Emma sat at the dinner table with her parents, Jameson and Callie, both very elegant. The conversation revolved around Emma's future plans, and her parents always had strong opinions on the matter. "Emma, you know you deserve someone on your level, someone who can offer the lifestyle you're accustomed to," Callie said, passing the salad dressing. Emma sighed, knowing her parents viewed the world through lenses that valued money too much. "I understand, Mom, but I think the most important thing is to find someone who truly understands and shares my values, not just my social status and those other superficial things you seem to value so much," Emma replied, trying to steer the conversation away from money and status. Jameson looked at her with a penetrating gaze, clearly unconvinced. "Values don't pay the bills, Emma. You need to think about the future, about stability. That's what really matters in the end," he insisted, hoping his daughter would see reality as he did. Emma knew that revealing the truth about the man she had just met, Francis, who was very wealthy, could appease her parents, but she preferred to keep that secret. She wanted her parents to approve of Francis for who he was, not for what his money could represent for the family. "Francis is an incredible man. He's caring and has a great worldview. He truly makes me happy," Emma explained, hoping her parents would someday see beyond material expectations. Meanwhile, Francis was in a jewelry store choosing an engagement ring for Emma. He wanted something that symbolized their journey together, something as unique and beautiful as the love he felt for her. After much searching, he found the perfect ring, a delicate piece with an elegant design that he knew Emma would love. With the ring safely in his pocket, he planned a special moment to propose. The big day arrived. Francis had planned a candlelit dinner at the restaurant, where they had their first official date during that event. Everything was perfectly arranged, from the flowers to the music playing softly in the background. When the main course was served, Francis held Emma's hand. "Emma, since I met you, my life has changed for the better. You've inspired me to be a better person, to dream bigger, and to love more deeply," he began, his voice filled with emotion. Emma felt her heart race, listening to every word with a mix of surprise and joy. Francis continued, "I want to spend the rest of my life with you, facing all the challenges together and sharing all the joys. Emma, will you marry me?" With tears in her eyes and a smile that lit up the room, Emma answered without hesitation, "Yes, Francis, 1,000 times yes." The moment was magical, the kind of scene Emma had always imagined but never expected to become a reality. She knew challenges were ahead, especially with her parents, but at that moment, all that mattered was the love and the bright future she and Francis would build together. As the two celebrated, everyone in the elegant restaurant toasted to the couple and true love. Sitting together on the small terrace of Emma's apartment, Francis delicately brought up the subject. "Emma, I would like to formally ask for your hand from your father. It would be important to me to have your parents' blessing," Francis said, hoping for a positive response. Emma, however, hesitated, her eyes drifting toward the horizon. "Francis, I'm not sure now is the best time for you to meet my parents. They are a bit traditional and very demanding." Her voice trembled slightly as she tried to mask her anxiety with a forced smile. Francis noticed her hesitation and felt a weight of uncertainty forming in his chest. Why would she be so reluctant to introduce me to them? Is Emma afraid that I won't meet their expectations? Or is there something else she's not telling me? Francis reflected on Emma's previous interactions, recalling how she rarely mentioned her parents except to highlight their high expectations. Maybe they really are very strict, or perhaps Emma fears they might disapprove of our union for some reason she's not yet ready to reveal. Trying to ease the tension, Emma quickly changed the subject. "Did you see the latest news about that exotic animal smuggling scandal? It's horrible to think that there are people out there selling meat from endangered animals." "I'm glad you're always on the right side of the law doing what you can to help," she said, trying to steer the conversation into less personal territory. Francis nodded, but concern still clouded his mind. "Yes, it's truly reprehensible. I could never understand how anyone gets involved in something so horrible. We'll do what we can through our restaurants to ensure that none of this is supported by us." "But Emma," Francis looked her directly in the eyes, searching for truth in her expression. "Please don't change the subject. It's important to me. Why are you so reluctant to take me to meet your parents?" Emma sighed, knowing she couldn't avoid the conversation much longer. "Francis, my parents are really complicated. They have this idea that I should be with someone of a certain level, someone who can elevate our status even further. They're extremely conservative and judgmental about everything. I'm afraid they'll judge you just because of your humble beginnings, even though you've made your fortune. But I'm rich now, Emma. Wouldn't that satisfy them? I've met people like them before, and I believe money could be enough to convince them, if that's really the big issue preventing me from finally meeting them," Francis asked, trying to understand. "It's not that simple. For them, it's not just about money. It's about lineage and connections. They're very particular and demanding about everything. I just don't want you to be hurt or rejected by them. I know how venomous they can be," Emma confessed, the anguish clear in her voice. Francis nodded, a mix of frustration and understanding in his eyes. He decided to respect Emma's timing, but he knew that eventually he would have to face this barrier. His love for her required it, and he was prepared to prove his worth, not just as a successful businessman, but as the man who truly loved Emma. One day, Francis was checking the arrangement of cutlery and glasses at one of his restaurants, dressed in a simple shirt and jeans, which was his usual attire to maintain a low profile and accessibility. As he moved between the tables, ensuring everything was perfect for the evening, a middle-aged couple caught his attention. They seemed to be searching for something specific on the menu, murmuring to each other with expressions of curiosity and expectation. Approaching with a smile, Francis asked if he could help with a recommendation. "We were curious about exotic meats you might offer," the man said, looking him up and down, assuming Francis was a waiter. "Of course, we have several exotic options that are entirely legal and approved for consumption here in the United States of America," Francis explained, maintaining a friendly and professional tone. "For example, we have venison and wild boar, both quite popular for their unique textures and flavors. And of course, all our supplies are certified to ensure sustainability and legality." The woman seemed intrigued and asked about more exotic meats, perhaps those not permitted. Francis, sensing the direction of the conversation, was quick to clarify. "We must be very careful with regulations. For example, meats like bald eagle or certain migratory birds are prohibited in the country. We do not support or serve products that violate wildlife protection laws." Impressed with his knowledge and the respectful way he handled the subject, the couple nodded in approval. Before stepping away, Francis, driven by curiosity and instinct, casually asked, "May I know your names?" "I like to address my customers by name. We're Jameson and Callie. We've lived in the city for many years, but this is our first time at this restaurant. We're ready to place our order, by the way." The man responded with a slight air of pride that didn't exude much warmth. Upon hearing their names, a suspicion grew in Francis's heart. "You wouldn't happen to be Emma's parents, would you? She mentioned her parents' names, and I believe it would be too much of a coincidence if you shared the same names." With a mix of surprise and caution, Callie confirmed, "Yes, we are her parents. How do you know? Why are people talking about us? I hope you're treating our daughter well. If you two really are friends or something like that, since you know her parents' names." Taking a deep breath, Francis decided to introduce himself. "I apologize for the initial confusion. I didn't mean to cause any misunderstanding. I'm Francis. I work with food, and more importantly, I'm Emma's fiancé. I would very much like us to have dinner together, perhaps to get to know each other officially." Jameson and Callie exchanged glances, somewhat shocked, but accepted the invitation. "Let's say it would be a pleasure to welcome you into our home in the near future, Mr. Francis," Jameson said, although his voice carried a note of reservation. After Francis stepped away, Jameson and Callie's murmurs were anything but positive. "How could Emma get involved with someone we mistook for a waiter?" the man criticized in a low voice. "He seems decent, but he's definitely not what we expected for her," he added, disappointed. A while later, Emma was in the kitchen helping her mother, Callie, prepare a traditional dish for dinner, when Jameson, her father, entered the room with a more serious posture than usual. "Emma, we need to talk about something important," he announced, pulling out a chair to sit face-to-face with her. Callie paused her activities, wiping her hands on her apron as she observed the interaction, a slight frown of concern marking her forehead. "What happened, Dad?" "You don't usually act like this in any situation," Emma asked, feeling a knot forming in her stomach. She could tell by her father's tone that the conversation would be more serious than a simple, everyday discussion. Jameson sighed, choosing his words carefully, but his frustration was palpable. "Today, while visiting one of the restaurants in the city, we met Francis. He approached us, introduced himself as a worker at the place, and, more surprisingly, as your fiancé. Emma, why did we have to find out about your engagement this way? Why did you hide this from us?" Emma felt the weight of her father's words. She had hesitated to tell her parents about the engagement, fearing exactly this reaction. "I was trying to find the right moment to talk to you. I wanted you to get to know Francis better first, to see for yourselves how wonderful he is. I didn't want any premature judgments to affect him negatively," she explained, her voice trembling with the tension of the moment. Callie intervened softly, trying to mediate the conversation. "We understand that you want to protect your relationship, dear, but we are your family. We should have been among the first to know. Being surprised like this puts us in an uncomfortable position. Emma lowered her head, feeling torn between her love for Francis and respect for her parents. I understand, and I'm sorry for that. It won't happen again. He just wanted to do things the right way and propose to me in a respectful manner. Jameson, still dissatisfied but deciding to move forward, shifted the focus of the conversation. Well, since he invited us to dinner, I'll take responsibility for the menu. I want to ensure everything is perfect. With a nod, he dismissed the women from the kitchen. As soon as Callie and Emma left, Jameson headed to the basement, where he kept a special freezer for select meats. Opening it, he rummaged through the items until he found exactly what he was looking for: packages of exotic meat he occasionally acquired through dubious contacts. This will impress our know-it-all culinary expert, he muttered to himself, a malicious smile forming on his face. Let's see if he can identify these pieces. It'll be a real lesson in humility for him, he continued, as he planned a dinner that would not only challenge Francis, but also reaffirm his dominant position in the family. With the meats in hand, Jameson went back upstairs to prepare a dinner he believed would be unforgettable, completely unaware of the potential conflict his choices could provoke. The sun was beginning to set when Francis arrived at Emma's residence, dressed simply yet elegantly. He opted for a light linen shirt and cotton pants, a stark contrast to the luxurious environment that awaited him. Emma, visibly anxious, answered the door and was perplexed to see him. Francis, what are you doing dressed like that for dinner with my parents? They are very demanding and expect formality, and I didn't even know this dinner was happening in the first place, she said, her voice filled with concern as she looked at his casual attire. Francis smiled gently, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Trust me, Emma. I want them to see me as I really am, not just as an image I can project. I'll win them over with my sincerity and respect, not with my clothes, he explained, trying to calm her nerves. Reluctantly, Emma nodded, leading him inside. The dinner was about to begin, and the atmosphere was tense. The dining room was meticulously decorated, with fine china and gleaming silverware, reflecting her parents' sophisticated and materialistic taste. Jameson and Callie. They greeted Francis with a cold handshake and a forced smile, clearly judging his simplistic appearance. During dinner, the conversation was superficial, with Jameson and Callie discussing recent social events and their luxurious travels. Francis remained polite, responding when necessary, and kept his focus on Emma, who was clearly uncomfortable with the tension between her two worlds. Finally, the main course was served. Francis watched as the waiter placed the main dish in front of him, but something caught his attention and made his eyes widen. He realized that the plate contained exotic meats, which he immediately recognized as potentially illegal. His mind began to spin with suspicions and concerns. This looks like meat from protected species that I'm studying in my course. How did they get this? Could they be involved in smuggling? He pondered, horrified at the possibility that his future in-laws were involved in such dark activities. Even so, he maintained his composure, pushing the meat to the side of the plate while eating the side dishes. The meal continued, and he felt the weight of each bite, the discomfort growing inside him. Noticing that Francis hadn't touched the meat, Jameson finally broke the awkward silence. Francis, I noticed you didn't eat the meat. Is something wrong? Given your vast experience with restaurants, I thought you'd appreciate our somewhat unique choices. I expected you to try and guess what this piece is, Jameson asked, with a tone of challenge mixed with curiosity. Oh yes, about that, Francis began, choosing his words carefully. I really appreciate the effort, and it's true that I know quite a bit about meat, but recently I adopted a vegetarian diet for health and ethical reasons, he explained, trying to keep the atmosphere as light as possible. Callie, surprised, raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued by this revelation. Interesting. And how do you maintain your knowledge of meats while being a vegetarian? She asked, looking at Francis with a mix of skepticism and interest. The question hung in the air, loaded with implications and curiosity, as Francis pondered how to respond, knowing that each word could drastically alter the dynamic of the evening. The more I delve into the subject, the more being a vegetarian seems justifiable to me, It's something very personal. As the dinner drew to a close, the atmosphere remained charged, a mix of formality and unspoken tensions. Francis, maintaining his composure throughout the evening, bid farewell to Jameson and Callie with a polite handshake and a smile that barely concealed his unease. Emma accompanied Francis to the door, noticing the serious expression on his face. "Francis, are you okay? You seemed a bit distant after the main course. I didn't expect the person who arranged this dinner without telling me beforehand to be so quiet in front of my parents." "Emma, I know this might sound crazy, but the meat served at dinner, I believe it might be smuggled. Some of those meats aren't just exotic. They're completely illegal in our country." Emma looked at him incredulously, her eyebrows raised in surprise. "Francis, that's impossible. My parents have been involved in anti-smuggling campaigns for years. They're some of the biggest donors to organizations that protect wildlife." "You must be mistaken," she responded, her voice firm, trying to convince him that there had been a mistake. "I understand why it seems unlikely, Emma, but something's not right. The knowledge I have about meats tells me those weren't ordinary. I'll do whatever it takes to prove what I'm saying. If I'm wrong, I promise I'll apologize to them and never bring it up again," Francis stated, the determination clear in his voice. Emma, still unable to believe any of this, simply nodded. "Okay, Francis, do what you need to do, but don't invent anything too complex or dangerous." She closed the door behind him, doubt and concern mixed in her gaze as she watched him walk away. Meanwhile, back in the kitchen, Jameson and Callie discussed the dinner. "I think the dinner was a success. Despite Francis's surprising dietary choices, he was quite surprised by the dish you served us all," Callie commented, collecting the plates. Jameson laughed a low, confident chuckle. "Yes, though I would have loved to see his expression if he knew what was really on his plate. I serve pangolin meat, you know. A rare delicacy and yes, an endangered species, but our suppliers can really get anything." Callie looked around, making sure they were alone before responding. "And the pangolins we received last week, how is that situation going? I know many of them die during transport since our shippers are so closely monitored by the police. They are safe at our secret location. Our contacts in Asia continue to supply, and the demand here only grows. This smuggling business is becoming very profitable, more so than any donation we make to silence environmental organizations," Jameson said, checking his phone for updates from his associates. Callie smiled, pleased with the confirmation. "We just need to keep this out of the spotlight. Donations are a great cover. No one suspects wildlife defenders when you're running a smuggling operation like the one we have here." The conversation made it clear that despite their appearances and reputation as wildlife defenders, Jameson and Callie were deeply involved in a smuggling scheme they financed, using their influence and resources to camouflage their true activities. As they cleaned the kitchen, both reflected on the success of their illicit venture, ignoring the potential consequences if their actions were discovered. In the days following the dinner, Francis became consumed by the need to uncover the truth about Emma's parents' suspicious activities. He spent hours in his office, surrounded by notes and maps, scouring information about smuggling routes and possible illegal animal storage locations. His obsession was palpable, each lead and every detail meticulously analyzed in search of concrete proof. Emma, noticing Francis's growing obsession, found him one afternoon, surrounded by papers and aerial photos of a remote area he suspected to be a smuggling point. "Francis, this has gone too far," she began, concern marking every word. "You're letting this consume your life. Please think about what you're doing. My parents aren't criminals. You're putting yourself in danger for something that isn't true." Francis looked at her, his eyes tired, but his determination still firm. "Emma, I found a location that could be the key to all of this. It's an isolated area with records of suspicious activity near Lost Creek Road. I need to see this up close." "No, Francis. You don't need to." Emma raised her voice, frustration and fear evident in her tone. "It's dangerous. And what if something happens to you? I can't lose you over an unfounded suspicion. I need you here, safe. Please promise me you won't go there." Francis, seeing the genuine anguish in Emma, sighed, feeling the weight of her words. "Okay, I promise I won't go. "I won't do anything that could worry you or put us at risk," he said, even though a part of him screamed to move forward. Meanwhile, in the hidden shed deep within a dense forest, Jameson and Callie visited a clandestine complex where exotic animals were kept before being sold on the clandestine market. The facilities were extensive, well hidden under the forest canopy, with multiple cages housing everything from rare birds to exotic mammals. "We need to make sure everything is under control, especially now that Francis is asking questions," Jameson said, inspecting the facilities with a critical eye. "He's smarter than we initially expected." Callie, beside him, watched a group of caged pangolins. "It's a shame that Emma got involved with someone as curious and annoying as that man. We need to keep this away from her, for her sake and ours. We can't predict how she would react to all of this. She can't know," Jameson agreed thoughtfully. "Her innocence about our business has been a blessing. And as for Francis, we need to divert his attention. Perhaps it's time to use our contacts to calm his suspicions permanently." The two walked through the site, discussing not only the daily operations, but also potential strategies for dealing with the threat Francis posed. Each step they took among the silent animals was a reminder of how much was at stake and how far they were willing to go to protect what they had built. Driven by a sense of justice and the need to expose the truth, Francis ignored Emma's pleas and decided to go to the suspicious location on his own. Before leaving, he meticulously prepared his equipment, including a high-definition camera, a voice recorder, and his cell phone loaded with several extra batteries. He wore dark, durable clothing, appropriate for not drawing attention, and for the potentially rough terrain of the location. His heart beat with a mix of determination and nerves as he drove to the address he had discovered. Upon arriving, Francis parked his car at a safe distance and approached on foot, keeping himself hidden behind the dense vegetation. The complex was quiet, but activity was clearly visible in the evening light. From afar, he spotted Jameson and Callie supervising the transfer of some large crates into a vehicle. Without hesitation, he began filming, ensuring he captured every detail, every suspicious movement. "Jameson, Callie, how can you live with yourselves deceiving everyone around you? You are smugglers and liars," Francis shouted, staying hidden but ensuring his voice was heard. "This is all going to end. Emma will know who you really are. She will be disappointed and horrified by your actions." Hearing the shouts, Jameson and Callie looked alarmed in his direction. Quickly, they signaled to some burly men waiting near one of the sheds. Within minutes, Francis was captured and, without much ceremony, locked in a large cage that had previously housed exotic animals. Fighting the panic that began to set in, Francis watched as the couple approached. "Do you really think you can threaten us, Francis? You have no idea who you're dealing with," Jameson said with calculated coldness. Callie, looking at Francis with a mix of pity and contempt, added, "We'll take care of this. A multimillionaire's ransom could fetch a good sum. Yes, we discovered you're the owner of the restaurant chain, just in case you need to throw someone's name in the searches." Francis, realizing the gravity of his situation, began to understand the extent of the smuggling scheme. He looked around, seeing the animals in small cages, and felt a wave of sadness and compassion for these innocent creatures. His heart tightened at the thought of their suffering, and a deep anger grew within him against those who profited from such cruelty. Meanwhile, Emma, who had returned home to retrieve the keys to one of her parents' NGO offices, was searching the house for the set of keys that seemed to have disappeared. She rummaged through drawers, looked under papers, and checked between books on the shelf. Growing increasingly frustrated with the difficulty of finding what she needed, the silence of the house amplified her anxiety, each second seeming to stretch as she continued her desperate search. Emma rummaged once again through the living room drawers, her heart pounding with the growing sense that something was wrong. Every possible place the keys could be had already been meticulously searched, but without success. With a heavy sigh, she decided to call her father, hoping he might have a clue about the keys' whereabouts, or perhaps even taken them by mistake. She picked up her cell phone, her fingers sliding urgently across the screen until she found her father's number. As the phone rang, she tried to control her breathing, preparing to stay calm during the conversation. "Dad," she began as soon as he answered, her voice trembling despite her efforts. "I've been looking for the NGO office keys and can't find them anywhere. You didn't happen to see them around, did you? I really need them." On the other end of the line, Jameson responded with a voice that seemed strangely hurried and somewhat breathless, which immediately raised more suspicions in Emma. "Oh, Emma dear, I'm at home now and looked around quickly when you mentioned the keys, but I didn't see anything here. Maybe you left them somewhere else. You know how sometimes these things can just disappear." Emma frowned, confused by her father's quick and somewhat evasive response. She was about to press on the strangeness of the situation when a muffled shout pierced the silence in the background of the call. It was a familiar voice, desperate and clear even at a distance. "Emma!" It was undoubtedly Francis. "Dad, what was that?" I heard someone shout. "Is everything okay there?" "I'd like you to tell me where you really are right now," Emma asked, her anxiety growing exponentially with each beat of her heart. Jameson, realizing he might have made a mistake by not checking the surroundings before answering the call, responded quickly, trying to cover up any concern. "Oh, don't worry, dear. It must have been the TV. I was watching a movie here. You know how noisy those action films can be." But before Emma could process the response and question further, the call was abruptly cut off, leaving her with the phone still in her hand and a sense of dread. Fear and concern for Francis's well-being, combined with the suspicion that her father was lying, pushed her into action. She quickly dialed the police, reporting her concern. "Please, I need someone to go to the location on the old Lost Creek Road. My fiancé may be in danger." He mentioned this area before, suspecting illegal activities. After passing the information to the police, Emma didn't wait. She grabbed her car keys and drove as fast as possible to the indicated location, her heart tight with anxiety and fear of the unknown. Meanwhile, in the isolated location, Francis was locked in a cage, facing Jameson and Callie. "What are you going to do with me now? Emma will soon notice I'm missing and come looking for me," he asked, trying to remain calm despite the desperate circumstances. Callie looked at Jameson before responding, her voice cold and calculating. "We haven't decided yet. Maybe we'll keep you as a hostage. Maybe ask for a ransom, or perhaps even convince you to work for us. There are so many options. It's hard to choose just one." Throughout the city, Emma, her heart racing, drove at full speed to the location Francis had mentioned. When she arrived, her car skidded on the gravel as she braked sharply. Exiting the car, her breathing was heavy, her eyes frantically scanning the area for any sign of Francis. As she approached the shed, Jameson and Callie, who had seen her arrival through the security cameras, came out to meet her with forcibly calm expressions. "Emma, what are you doing here?" Callie asked, trying to hide the tension in her voice. "I came to get something I forgot, but what are you doing here? You said you were at home, and I heard that this place is somewhat shady, with some reports of smuggling going on around here." Emma fired off the questions quickly, suspicion evident in every word. Jameson tried to remain calm. "We're simply here to check out this shed, which is being auctioned off by our city after a major investigation. Nothing more. We're considering buying it to expand the NGO's activities," he said, evasive about the details. "And why did you lie about being at home when you weren't? And why are you in a place with so many reports of smuggling? And why did Francis shout my name in the middle of our call, Dad? Where is he?" Emma's questions were like arrows, direct and sharp. Her parents exchanged nervous glances, unable to formulate convincing answers. It was then that a distant shout broke the silence, once again Francis's voice calling for Emma. Without waiting for an answer, she ran toward the sound, her parents hesitant to follow. Emma found Francis locked in a cage. With tears in her eyes and trembling hands, she quickly unlocked the cage door. Francis stepped out, his eyes meeting hers, both relieved to be together again, yet still wrapped in the tension of the moment. Jameson and Callie approached, complaining about Emma's interference. "You shouldn't have come here, Emma. This is entirely our business and no one else's." "You shouldn't have been involved in this," Callie said, her voice faltering in an attempt at authority. Emma, now standing beside Francis, her anger and disappointment boiling to the surface, confronted her parents. "How could you? Lies, smuggling, putting Frances in a cage. This is unacceptable. You're my parents, but what you've done here is horrible. You should be responsible. You should protect, not cause harm. Look, the police are outside. You'd better leave through another way if you don't want to be arrested, she said, her voice firm, but her heart broken by the betrayal. Frances, confused and still trying to grasp the situation, asked her as her parents hurried to leave. Why are you saving them from finally being punished for their acts against endangered species? They lied to you. They're criminals. Emma looked back, watching her parents' figures disappear into the darkness. Despite everything, they're still my parents. I can't do anything bad to them. They're the only family I have left, she said, her voice laden with emotion and a certain weight that Frances didn't yet fully understand. He stood there, watching Emma, pondering her last words. The only family left. What did she mean by that? What other losses had she faced? The night still held many questions, and as the sounds of sirens began to echo in the distance, the weight of the revelations was only beginning to unfold. After the tense night at the shed, the police managed to capture all the smugglers working with Jameson and Callie, who, however, managed to escape. Back in the comfort of their home, Emma and Frances tried to console each other, still trying to process the recent events. Frances sat beside Emma on the couch, holding her hands between his. I never imagined any of this would happen, Emma. When I saw what was happening, all I wanted was to protect you, he said, his voice full of concern and affection. Emma, visibly shaken and still in shock, struggled to find words. I just can't believe this, Frances. My parents were involved in something so horrible. How could I not see it? How could I be so blind? She shook her head, tears beginning to roll down her face. Frances hugged her, offering the comfort he could. You couldn't have known, Emma. They hid it from everyone. You have to know that you're not at all responsible for their absurd and completely irresponsible actions against nature. Only they are to blame for this. It was then that Frances, remembering something Emma had mentioned earlier, gently asked, Emma, you mentioned something about losing part of something earlier. Could you tell me a bit more about that? Emma took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. A few years ago, part of my family was on a private plane that crashed. Everyone on board died. They were my uncles and cousins. I was devastated. The only relatives left are in another country, and we lost contact a long time ago. Since then, my parents have been all I have. Frances squeezed her hand, his heart heavy with her pain. I'm so sorry, Emma, but know that when we get married, we'll build our own family. A family based on love, honesty, and respect. However, we still need to ensure that justice is served. What your parents did is unforgivable, and they need to be held accountable. Emma nodded, determination beginning to replace the initial shock. You're right, Frances. We need to do something to punish my parents and show them the right way to live life. I know their upbringing was bad, but that doesn't justify mistreating animals. It was then that Frances suggested a trap to capture her parents. We can make them think you broke up with me because I interfered too much in the family business. We can arrange a meeting saying you want to discuss something important, Emma agreed, seeing the opportunity to finally bring her parents to justice. Okay, let's do just that. I'll call them to meet me at the city park. They won't suspect anything, and we'll have the police on our side to capture them and anyone who tries to defend them. In the following days, they carefully planned every detail. Emma made the call, her voice trembling but convincing, while Frances and the police prepared in strategic positions around the meeting spot. On the appointed day, Emma sat on a park bench, nervously waiting for her parents' arrival. Frances watched from afar. Along with the police team hidden among the trees and bushes, the air was tense with the anticipation of the imminent confrontation, and Emma clutched her phone with trembling hands, ready to give the signal as soon as she spotted Jameson and Callie approaching. The day was cloudy, and a cool breeze rustled the leaves of the trees in the park where Emma had arranged to meet her parents. Sitting on an isolated bench, she nervously watched the path leading to the spot, her heart racing as she waited for Jameson and Callie to arrive. Frances, along with the police team, observed from a safe distance, ready to intervene at the right moment. When Emma saw her parents approaching, she took a deep breath, strengthening her resolve. As they arrived, Jameson's and Callie's expressions were ones of concern, but also relief upon seeing Emma alone. "Sweetheart, why did you want to see us here? And where's that meddling fiancé of yours, Frances? I thought you two were always together now, since you almost chose him over us yesterday," Callie asked in a soft voice, trying to probe the situation. Emma looked at her parents with a serious expression. "I needed to talk to you away from any interruptions. As for Francis, the truth is I broke up with him, and it was something very recent," Emma began, watching her parents' reactions closely. "He discovered things about your business, about the smuggling. I didn't know what to do. I was confused, but after thinking a lot, I decided I want to help you. We need to resolve this together," she said, seeking to elicit a confession. Callie and Jameson exchanged worried glances. Then Jameson stepped closer to Emma, lowering his voice. "Emma, you did the right thing by coming to us. We'll fix this, but you need to understand everything we've done was to ensure the best for our family." Callie, feeling more confident, added, "We can find a way out together. Maybe we can even bring Francis to our side if he's willing to understand the reasons why we do this kind of thing, but only if he has an open mind about it." Before they could continue, Emma discreetly signaled to Francis, who had been keeping an eye on the conversation. Within seconds, police officers emerged from their hiding spots and quickly approached Jameson and Callie, who were visibly shocked. "What's going on here? We can't believe we've been trapped by our own daughter today. We can't trust anyone anymore," Jameson exclaimed, as the officers announced they were being arrested for involvement in animal smuggling. As they were handcuffed, Jameson furiously glared at Francis, who was now approaching. "You brainwashed her, didn't you? It had to be. You're very wealthy now, but you come from a very humble family, which clearly reflected in you. You corrupted our own daughter against us." Francis remained calm despite the accusations. Emma, for her part, began to cry, the reality of the situation finally hitting her. Francis hugged her, offering comfort as her parents were taken away. "You did the right thing, Emma. This is about justice, about doing what's right, even if it's hard." Emma, still in Francis's embrace, watched as her parents were placed in the police car. With tears in her eyes but a sense of relief for having done the right thing, she walked away from the scene with Francis, ready to start a new chapter in her life, away from the shadows of the past. The days following her parents' arrest were filled with mixed emotions for Emma. Despite the relief and sense of justice, there was a lingering sadness in her heart for her parents' situation. To try to clear her mind and find some normalcy, Francis suggested they start planning their wedding, an event they hoped would be a new beginning, full of hope and joy. Together, they dedicated themselves to planning, choosing every detail with care and affection. They decided on a simple yet elegant ceremony outdoors, taking advantage of the natural beauty of a local garden that Emma had always loved. Discussions about flowers, music, and guests brought moments of lightness and connection, allowing them both to distract themselves from the painful recent memories. The wedding day arrived quickly, and it was a clear, sunny day, as if the weather itself wanted to offer its best for the occasion. Emma was stunning in a flowing wedding dress with delicate details, and Francis, always elegant, wore a tailored suit that perfectly complemented her look. The ceremony was intimate, with close friends and family who unconditionally supported the couple. They exchanged sincere and touching vows, promising love, loyalty, and a shared future, regardless of the challenges that might arise. After the ceremony, while the guests enjoyed the reception, Francis and Emma stepped away for a moment alone. Sitting under an old oak tree, they reflected on recent events. "How you know, Emma, despite everything, I feel like these trials have made us stronger, brought us closer," Francis said, holding her hand. Emma nodded, resting her head on his shoulder. "That's true. And despite the pain, I think we've managed to find our own justice. Now we need to focus on our future, on building the family we've always dreamed of," she replied, a shy smile appearing on her lips. The comfortable silence between them was a testament to the mutual understanding and complicity they had developed. "And speaking of family," Emma began, hesitant but with a glimmer of excitement in her eyes, "I discovered something yesterday that will change our lives even more." Francis looked at her, curious. "What is it that you need to tell me so badly? You know I don't like waiting for surprises. It makes me anxious, especially after everything we've been through lately," he confessed. "I'm pregnant, Francis. We're going to have a baby, our own child, and we'll have a beautiful family with him or her since we don't know the gender yet." The revelation came with joy and a bit of nervousness about the new responsibility. Francis's reaction was immediate. His eyes lit up, and he pulled her into a tight embrace. "This is incredible, Emma. I couldn't be happier. We're going to be parents," he laughed, the sound filling the air around them with pure happiness. After the tumultuous events that led to her parents' imprisonment, Emma found herself at a crossroads of emotions and decisions. The pain of family betrayal was deep, but she knew she couldn't let the shadow of her parents' mistakes define her future. With firm resolve, she decided it was time to cut ties and start a new chapter in her life, a chapter focused on healing and giving back. Inspired by Francis's unwavering support, Emma immersed herself in social projects, particularly those focused on environmental protection and animal rehabilitation, a direct reflection of her parents' crimes. She became an active figure in several NGOs, using her experience and resources to make a difference. Francis, in turn, stood by her every step of the way, offering not only financial support, but also his time and energy. Together, they participated in awareness campaigns, helped raise funds, and volunteered at animal shelters. As Emma became more involved in community work, she felt that she was, in a way, redeeming her family's image, turning their legacy of greed into one of generosity and care. She wasn't seeking recognition, but rather the inner peace that came from knowing she was doing the right thing. Meanwhile, in prison, Jameson and Callie faced the consequences of their choices. Separated from their life of luxury and forced to confront the reality of their actions, both went through moments of deep reflection. Initially, they were defensive and bitter, blaming Francis for their misfortunes. However, over time and through many conversations with each other, they began to acknowledge their mistakes. Slowly, they started participating in rehabilitation programs offered in prison, including courses on ethics and social responsibility, hoping to one day reconcile with their daughter. Back with Francis and Emma, they were finalizing preparations for a major fundraising event for the new animal reserve they were helping to establish. The event would be a celebration of progress and renewal, symbolizing their shared journey of growth and commitment to causes greater than themselves. On the night of the event, as guests began to arrive, Emma looked at Francis, gratitude and love reflecting in her eyes. "Without you, I would have never been able to overcome all of this. You showed me what it means to truly love not just one person, but an entire community." Francis, holding her hand, replied with a warm smile. "And you taught me the power of redemption and forgiveness. Together, we are building something that will last far beyond us." The event was a resounding success, with donations exceeding all expectations. As night fell and soft music echoed through the venue, Francis and Emma danced together, their hearts light with the satisfaction of a job well done and the promise of a bright future, not just for them, but for the community and the world around them. If this story captured your interest, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support is vital for us to continue bringing engaging stories frequently. Stay tuned so you don't miss the next exciting narrative coming soon to your screen. We greatly appreciate your support. See you next time.